and joyous Thanksgiving. And now the holidays are rolling in, which means that the end of 2015 is coming, according to the solar calendar, anyway. The title of my message, Let's Stand Up for True Parents, is something I'd like to share as a point for all of us to consider as we think about our new resolutions coming into the new year, 2016. To begin, I'd like to share a story about faith. In 1859, a famous French acrobat nicknamed Blondie decided to walk on a tightrope across the Great Niagara Falls in upstate New York. Thousands came from all over, placing bets on whether he'd be successful or fall to his death. He not only successfully accomplished his walk across the falls, but later went on to do more spectacular feats, including walking across on stilts. One time he had a sack over his head so he couldn't see. Another time he carried a stove on his back. He set up the stove in the middle of the rope and cooked an egg on it and ate it. But of all his famous crossings, the one that is remembered the most is when he crossed the falls with his manager, Harry Colcourt, on his back. By the time Blondine decided to take on this task, he was famous. When Blondine asked the crowd if they believed that he could carry a man on his back, everybody cheered. We believe! It was only when Blondine challenged the audience for a volunteer that the crowd fell silent. Nobody volunteered, except for his manager. Now, to cross the falls is no easy task, especially with someone on your back. Blondine was 5'5", he weighed about 140 pounds, and his manager also weighed in at 140 pounds, and the balancing rod that he used was about 50 pounds. So as the story goes, about a third of the way down the rope, Blondine realized he had to take a rest. So if you can see in the picture, there are actually these guy wires that line at different intervals along the main rope. And so Blondine could put his foot on one of the guy wires to just take a rest. And he told his manager, hey, you gotta get off my back just for a minute so I can take a rest. So here's Colcourt and Blondine, and they're standing together on this rope, and he's realizing this is not easy. This is a big challenge. And after a few moments, he says, okay, Colcourt, get back on my back. Of course, Blondine has these slick tights on, so it takes Colcourt a few times. But he finally gets back on his back, and they keep going like this. And every so often, Blondine has to stop, and Colcourt gets off, and he takes a rest. But now, by the middle of the rope, by the middle of the crossing, there are no more guy wires. And the rope is swaying violently. And Blondine knows the only way I'm going to do this is if I run. So here he is with his balancing beam, Colcourt on his back, and he's running, as fast as he can to try to get to the next guy wire. And he reaches that guy wire, and as soon as he puts his foot on the guy wire, it snaps from underneath him. Now, a lot of people think that it was sabotaged on purpose because there was money in Blondine's fall. So, Blondine is trying his best, and he finally regains his balance. And again, he charges forward and reaches the next guy wire so he can take a quick rest before finally reaching the other end, perspiring and exhausted. So why do I share this story? Because this is a story of true faith on the part of Blondine's manager, Harry Colcourt. When it came time to actually trust his life in Blondine's hands, he was the only one who demonstrated absolute faith. we know that Blondine gave his manager the following instructions before taking on the falls with him on his back. Look up, Harry. Probably, maybe in a French accent. I'm not going to try to imitate that. Look up, Harry. You are no longer Calcourt. You are Blondine. Until I clear this place, be a part of me, mind, body, and soul. If I sway, sway with me. Do not attempt to do any balancing yourself. If you do, we will both go to our death. And that's exactly what Calcourt did, despite experiencing some of the closest calls to death in his life. Now, if we equate Blondine in the story to our true parents and the course that they walk, how often are we just spectators standing on the sidelines? Are we willing to come along and trust our lives in their hands, like Blondine's manager? Are we willing to follow true parents' course of life? I know the answer is not easy. It's not an easy one for answer, including for myself. So I want to actually put these questions aside for a moment. And I'd like to share 3 points to consider when we think about the impact our true parents have had and can have on our lives. So the first point I'd like to make is that our belief and trust in true parents is what allows us to do great things in our lives. On a spiritual level, we know this is true because if we study the divine principle, we know that true parents have accomplished the merit of the age. In other words, in human history, God has always needed somebody to break through in becoming a true person so the rest of us have someone to follow. Our true parents raised the bar, so to speak, in terms of how high human beings can become spiritually. In terms of how high human beings can become spiritually in our relationship with God. And namely, not only just on a spiritual level, but actually in our relationship as God's true son and true daughter. We can ride the metaphorical wave that was established by our true parents. On the flip side, we may really miss out on something wonderful if we fail to have that trust and belief. For Calcourt, his experience on Blondine's back gave him a first-hand look at the falls. But not only that, it made him famous. How many of us have fallen silent when we were given the chance to share about true parents? How many of us have been asked whether that Korean couple on the wall are our grandparents, and we weren't sure exactly how to answer? When I was in college, and just a few months after being blessed, some of my friends came over to my house just on a whim. And in the spur of the moment, I took my blessing picture and I turned it around. On the off chance that they would see it and then be really confused. And I remember later my mother called me and she was so upset and so hurt that I would be, so ashamed of my blessing that I would do that. And of course, that wasn't true. But at the same time, I wasn't really ready to share my faith with others. And I share this story because the truth is it's not always easy to be honest about ourselves with others. And I know just as you do that, we're at where we're at, and that's okay. But I can't help but implore myself and all of you, why not be more bold? Why not be willing to say the name of our true parents when we're given the chance? we may be surprised by the responses we get. There may just be someone in your audience who wants to hear more, or who even has a personal experience with true parents that they can share with you. Our faith can be even more validated through sharing with others, and our relationships can be even more honest and genuine and real when we're true to ourselves and to others. Sometimes all it takes for something amazing to happen is if we put ourselves on a limb once in a while. We may be missing out on a chance to learn something if we stand inactive. And in Buddhism, it states that inaction is just as much of an action as being active itself. If we always choose to sit on the sidelines, we may be missing on a lifetime opportunity. The second point I wanted to share is that since our true parents are the hope for all mankind, we can have hope and we can inspire hope in others because of our true parents. People are looking for a true model of absoluteness, one with real integrity and goodness. There was a famous football coach at Penn State named Joe Paterno. He was considered a legend, not only at the university, but to the town of State College, and even to the greater world of college football. He was known for taking the names off the jerseys of his players because he wanted to emphasize that we were all a team and that they would lose or win as one, and that no one was better or worse than anyone else. He turned down $1 million offer by the New England Patriots to coach their team in order to stay with his team. He was a father figure for so many of his players. His name even sounds like the word for father, right? Paterno, paternal. But in one moment where he bore witness to his assistant coach taking advantage of a young boy, he chose to close his eyes and not take responsibility for it. And in the end, this simple act reflected his flawed value system. And he lost everything because of it, including his football team, the trust in his fans, and even his own life as a result. People want to see role models of absolute goodness so badly. We live in a world that pushes this idea that all people are flawed and that it's human nature to do horrible things to one another. But true parents are our shining example of a true man and a true woman. And they're living a life in oneness with God. They've given the world a vision and an ideal of peace through the blessing. When we hold on to them as our hope, our faith, our freedom, then we can overcome any difficulties. We know that in times of war, there are two types of people. Those looking towards an ideal of peace, who hold on to hope, and those who are consumed by the present situation. Some people become crippled by the after effects of their experience. We know this is true in war especially. But others can actually move on to do great and amazing things because they hold on to something greater in the midst of their adversity. We cannot thrive and grow if we do not look ahead at something greater than ourselves. Our true parents offer the greatest hope to humankind. Others can feel hope and become inspired through our willingness to share about our true parents. And lastly, the third point I want to emphasize is that true parents need us. I'd like to share a personal story of the heart of our true parents. The way that I've come to feel this best is through dreams that I've had about them. The first dream I want to share was one that I had while in college. It happened only in the span of 30 minutes, but it was one of those powerful dreams that shook me to my core, and I woke up and I was crying. In my dream, I was walking through the Boston church. We were preparing for an event where true parents were going to speak. And I was about to go down the stairs to the lobby, and I noticed that True Father was standing on the balcony. And so I bowed and I greeted you, True Father, and there was another person there, and a young child, a young daughter who was leaning against the railing. And all of a sudden, the dream got really intense, because the railing gave way, and this child began to fall. And as I watched this happen, actually, my heart sank, and I pretty much gave up at that moment. I knew there was no way to save her. I was just preparing myself for, calling 911, getting the paramedics, all of the, really nasty aftermath of what that was going to mean. And as I was kind of contemplating this, all of a sudden it was like time stood still. Everybody froze. And I looked over and I saw True Father, and he was looking at me, and his face was very serious, and I looked in his eyes, and he seemed to say, "You can save her. You still have time." And I whipped around and I looked, and there was the girl in mid-fall, holding on for dear life. And I reached out my hand, and somehow I said, "Grasp my hand." And it takes a lot to say that, but I said it twice. "Grasp my hand, grasp my hand." And she did. And I pulled her toward me, and then I held her so tight. And all of a sudden, it was like time started again. And everybody, around was coming over and trying to figure out what had happened. And there I was on the ground just holding her, just crying and crying and crying. So grateful and so relieved and kind of shocked that I had the ability to save this girl. And then I woke up, and of course I'm holding my pillow really tightly and I'm crying. But for me, this dream showed me that True Father believed that I could save this child. He gave me the encouragement that I needed to believe in myself and my ability to solve that situation. And another dream I had was with our true mother. At the time, I was working as a dorm parent here in Bridgeport, and it was around Foundation Day. And I was thinking, I was really, praying and asking God, what can I offer at this time? And this is such an important time. I don't know what I can offer. And as I was thinking about this and really praying about it, then I had a dream. And in my dream, I was actually a housemaid in a huge mansion, kind of like Downton Abbey, if any of you guys know the show. And as I was cleaning, one of the rooms, then suddenly True Mother came in. And so I was going to excuse myself, and I looked over and I noticed that True Mother looked so sad. And I couldn't help but just stop, and I really asked True Mother, is there anything I can do to help you? Is there anything I can do to, make you not feel so miserable? And somehow, in this, interaction, we weren't actually talking, but it was all intuitive. Somehow I figured it out, what our true mother needed. She needed socks put on all of her true grandchildren. There were 15 of them in the house. And as soon as I knew this, I was so happy, and I got right to work. I can do this, Pairs of socks, let's gather the pairs of socks. We're going to put them on her grandchildren. We can do this. And that's when I woke up. And for me, the meaning was clear. I needed to take care of the 15. And actually, at the time, there were 15 dorm boys in the house. And I realized that my goal was to feed them and to clothe them, which I already was doing. But I realized that the difference this time was that now I could do it with the heart of our true parents. I was doing this because I I realized that they needed me to do this in this situation. So the point I wanted to make in sharing these two dreams is that our two parents need us to carry out their work in our lives through the relationships that we already have. We just need the confidence and the conviction to do it, like Colcord had when he crossed the falls on Blondin's back. When I realize how important I am for God and for true parents, suddenly I don't feel so much like a martyr, like I'm just pushing out of duty. But actually, I'm doing this out of a heart and desire to help, to serve, because I've been asked personally. So to recap, we can do great things in our lives by believing in our true parents. Our greatness is measured by our faith in true parents. We can inspire others by connecting them to true parents. And finally, God and true parents need me and you as a key player in the unification of this world. Will you have conviction and stand up for God? Yes. Will you, for true parents? Yes. In closing, I just want to leave you with one more note. In many ways, with Father's passing and the confusion in our movement, our true mother has had to be her own John the Baptist. She needs us more than ever at this time. Let's stand up and help our true parents the best way that we can, by showing their example in our lives, by loving our children more, our neighbors, by forgiving our enemies, and by becoming peacemakers in this world. Thank you very much, and God bless. Our most beloved Heavenly Parent, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so, so much for our true parents. Thank you for their strength, and for their conviction, and for their heart to push through every challenge for you and for us. Thank you that we can be living at this time, such an amazing time, when there are troubles and there are difficulties in this world, but at the same time, we have true parents. And because of that, we have the strength, and we have the conviction, and we can have the heart to break through. Thank you so much for each and every person here. Thank you for each opportunity and each moment we have to share with one another and to really walk with one another as we go through the different moments in our days and our lives. And as we come to know your heart, and as we come closer to you every day, we pray all of these things in gratitude, holding the names of our true parents and our true family. We pray all of these things in my name, Abraham and Mika, blessing your family, and you.